Yo, what's good, man? Today, I'm gonna be doing a color grading breakdown. Now, I haven't done a computer-based tutorial in so long. These are like the most boring things in the world to me. So if you want more things like this, you want more of these sorts of tutorials, the best way and the only way to show me is to hit the like button, hit the thumbs up. You don't even gotta do it right now. I hate when people say, yo, like this video, but you didn't even show me none yet. I could be completely trash. I wanna break down the color grade from this most recent music video I just did for my homie Hsl. So I'm gonna take you through the two scenes. I'm gonna show you guys how to color grade these from scratch using Final Cut Pro 10 and Color Finale within Final Cut Pro 10. This isn't necessary by any means. This is just something that I like, and the most recent update with Color Finale with them adding the color mask is just incredible. It's just great, good tool. Not getting paid to say this. So throughout this video, if you like it, you can go check it out and purchase it. No affiliate links. I'm not getting paid at all. A couple things before I get into this, and I don't want to waste a ton of your time here at the beginning. Keep in mind that when I do this for my own projects, I take forever to do this. I'm literally gonna sit here for hours just doing it. And then I'm gonna go eat, and then I'm gonna come back and look at it, because it's this phenom where you think you killed the color grade, and then you come back to the computer and look at it, and it's just like, yo, this is trash. You always wanna give yourself that little bit of time to realize if it's trash or not. So I'm gonna run through this fairly quick. I'm not gonna be breaking down Color Finale and everything that it can do. This is not a review on that. This is how I color graded this video. This is shot on a Canon C200. If you don't have a camera with high bit depth and you're not able to push and pull colors that well, I highly suggest you invest into like a denoising plugin. If you use DaVinci, just use the denoiser in there. It'll take out some of that blotchiness from the colors. But with all that said, let's get into it. I got the two shots right here inside of Color Finale, and I already recorded this tutorial. And when I did it the first time, I showed you guys every single layer on the original grade. I'm not gonna do that because it's gonna take a ton of time. We'll just hop straight into the color grade. Now, I got my scopes over here. This is the vector scope, and this is a waveform. These are pretty much the only two scopes that I use when I'm color grading. And I don't really pay too much attention to these when I'm color grading, if I'm being completely honest with you, unless I need to like reference the color and make sure it's accurate. I found myself like really like going by the book when I was color grading. I wanted to drag my black point all the way down to 0 and my white point all the way up to 100 on the waveform. And this is what people tell you to do, but if you look at stills, if you look at color grades from actual like films and stuff that you like, you'll notice that these points are nowhere near that. So I just color grade off of vibe. You know, I reference this in terms of color. I like to get my skin tones good, but beyond that, that's all. So we got Color Finale Pro. I'm gonna drop this straight onto this first clip, which is him in the bathroom, and this is the first color grade that we're gonna be doing. Now in the actual music video, this had like a super green vibe, and I knew I wanted to go for this because it just feels gritty and grimy, and that's what I'm gonna recreate right now. So in Color Finale, you have all these different adjustments over here: exposure, temperature, saturation, all that. I like to just go into the edit layers and just drop my layers in layer by layer, rename it to what I need it to be, and then just rock that way. So I'm gonna start doing that. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop in the color wheels, and I'm gonna rename this tones. I like to first go through and adjust my shadows, midtones, highlights, just to get to the vibe where I want it to be. And again, I'm not referencing the waveform super hard here either. This is just all off of like my own personal vibe. So shadows, good right there. Bring my midtones down just a tad bit. I'm gonna bring them way down actually, because I want this image to feel darker. I'm gonna drop my highlights down too. I just want this to be like a darker looking image. From here, I add just a tad bit of saturation and not too much. And this is my tones. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add in a gradient mask. I wanna add more of a focal point on him in the image. I feel like this is just kind of flat lighting. It doesn't have like a super like shadow to highlight vibe to it. So I'm gonna add another layer. So I'm gonna do a color wheels. I'm gonna rename this gradient. And then from here, I'm gonna click on this and add a mask. I click on this mask, I'm gonna click on this one right here, which is the edge mask. If you've ever like colored photos in Lightroom, this is like a a gradient mask? I think that's what they call it. It's basically just a slight gradient to add in whatever you want. You can do color, tone, whatever you want. So I think that's good. I'm gonna drag it up a little bit. And then from here, if I click back on this color wheels layer, I'm just gonna bring down the midtones. You can see like this is adding just like a dark point down at the bottom. It's almost giving like a gradient, like this is bright up here, this is dark down here. Draw my midtones like way down like that. And then from there, I'm gonna readjust this. I wanna bring this up just a little bit, like right there. So this is before the gradient, after the gradient. See what it's doing to the image, giving us like more of a dark feel to it. Next thing I want to do is I want to adjust this red because it's like really bothering me. So if I click on this, I'm gonna add in the 6 vectors and I'm gonna just rename this red, just so we know exactly what's happening. So if I click on the red, I just want to adjust the hue. Looking at my vector scope up here, I can see that this red is shifting more towards the magenta side, which I don't want. I want this to be like more red. So I'm gonna just adjust the hue of this slightly more towards that R. And I'm looking at it. I don't want it to be super orange, but I don't want it to be magenta either. So that looks good. Another thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just punch the saturation because I know that this is the focal of the shot. I know that this is gonna be the poppy thing in the shot. And I thought about this before I even color graded it. I thought about this when I bought the outfits for the video. So I'm gonna punch it. Before, after, more red, more poppy, more contrasted, more saturated. Next thing I wanna do is let's start color grading. So I'm gonna drop in another color wheel. And I'm gonna rename this color grade. Now looking at this image, just off of my eye, I can tell that it's leaning more towards the magenta side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna adjust the tint on it just to add more green. So I mean, really, I could just keep adding the tint right here. You can see that we're already getting closer to where we wanna be with the color grade. I'm gonna just up this to like 5. Let's do like 5. And it's not much, but definitely adjust this a little bit to bring out a little bit of that magenta. So in the color grade, I'm gonna bring my shadows down to like more of a teal tone. And I'm gonna teeter between the shadows and the midtones. So what I'm doing with the midtones is I'm just trying to keep my midtones warm. I want my midtones to still feel like skin right now. So I'm gonna teeter between the shadows, the midtones, trying to get blue in the shadows, but still trying to keep our skin tones looking natural for the time being. So if we do before and after, you can see that we get a little bit of blue in these tones, but we're still keeping that warmness and that warmth in our skin. Next thing I want to do is I want to adjust the highlights, and this is where the magic's going to come in with the green. So I'm just going to start dragging this towards green. And you can see we're already getting pretty much close to where we need to be with our color grade. So after I do that, I'm going to teeter between the midtones and the highlights. So I'm going to go add more warmth back into the skin. Then I'm going to go add more green into the highlights, and I'm going to go add more warmth into the skin. And this is just like a kind of like a balancing act, if you will. And don't worry about this too much. Like, this might look over the top, but if you like think about like films that you like and like music videos, the grade is over the top. So that's what we want to go for this. Like, I want this to be green. I want it to really, really, really pop off the screen. So I'm gonna leave that like that for the time being. A lot of people might say that this is done, like this looks good. But one thing I really want to do is I really want to bring the skin tone back into this. Like I want him to still feel warm. All right. So I'm gonna add in another color wheels layer, and then here on this one I'm gonna rename this one skin. And I'm gonna add in a mask for this one. Click on our mask, and then we're gonna do a Hsl mask. And through this, I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna key out his skin, and then we're gonna bring some of that warmness. Come on, like. Dang, bro, like you just gonna drive the 18-wheeler up the block while I'm doing my tutorial? That's crazy. All right, so first thing I wanna do, I wanna go into the mask source, and we're gonna do input image unmanaged. And the reason we do this is I don't want it to be based off the previous layer. If we do it based off the previous layer, then we can see we got a lot of like green in the skin. We wanna just key it how it was before we first got into the image. All right, so this is that. We're gonna do the input image unmanaged, and then from here we're gonna click this, and we're just gonna start selecting the skin tone. So if we want to see what we've already selected, down here on the right side, this display button, we could do composite mask, and this is gonna show us what we have selected. The white is gonna indicate what's selected in our mask that we're trying to do. So I'm gonna do plus, and I'm just gonna go through and select more of his skin tone, just to be careful, like not to add in too many other colors, because it's gonna be really easy for me to start selecting the wall, because the wall is also warm. So I'm gonna just keep clicking in until I get to a point where it's selected way too much. Like if we do that right there, we can see, all right, that's way too much selected. So from here, I'm just gonna refine the mask. So I'm gonna open the saturation up just a little bit on the mask. This feature is a little bit finicky because Color Finale just added it in. So like, you know, sometimes you might feel like you're moving a slider, but you might not move a slider. So just be mindful of that. Open the saturation up a little bit. I'm gonna open up the the luminance just a little bit as well. And I'm gonna just pull these off at the bottom so this fades off a little bit better. From here, I'm just gonna adjust where this is. Let's go more towards the red side. I mean, more towards the more saturated side. And I'm gonna move this over a little bit as well. That looks good. And then from here, one thing I wanna do is, I wanna adjust my blur. And this isn't an incredible key by any means. This is just me trying to key this out for the sake of this video. I'm not gonna lie to you, but this is fine. This will work really well for what we needed to do anyways. It's not gonna matter at the end regardless, because we're gonna drop a ton of film grain on this to give it that really gritty vibe. So we're not gonna see any sort of color splotching anyways once that's done. So once we key out the skin, we get the tone that we want. The only thing that we need to do is add warmth into the mid-tone. So I'm gonna just grab this joint and just drag it straight up. And you can see like this is just adding that warmthness back into his skin tone. And I'm gonna drop down the saturation and the shadows just a little bit. And then I'm gonna go add a little bit more of those warm tones in there. So this is before, after. You can see he looks a lot more brown. He looks like he's actually alive in the shot. So I'm gonna add a little bit more of that warmth in the midtones. And this is pretty much it. Now, if I was doing this for my own sake, what I would do is I would click on my skin tone and I would drop down the opacity of the skin tone layer. I don't want him to be too separated. I want him to feel like he's in the scene. So I don't want him to be too warm. I still want to have him catch some of that green cast. So I'm gonna bring that up to like 75 or so, maybe like even 70-ish. And then I will also go back through the tones and readjust these. I think this could be a lot more dramatic. I would actually drop in like a curves layer right here, and then I would mess around with this curve. Like this right here looks closer to what I would like it to look like. Just drop those shadows down and bring the midtones and pop them a little bit harder. And this looks a lot closer to what I would like it to be. And I'll also drop maybe his skin tone down just a little bit, maybe like 50-ish. And this looks good. So this is the before, this is the after. That's before, and that's after. And keep in mind too, with this shot, I forgot to mention, this is also not even like straight out of the camera. This also has a conversion LUT on it as well. So on the C200 and pretty much every other cinema camera, Final Cut Pro is gonna read the codec and use the camera that it was shot on, and then it's gonna automatically apply a conversion LUT. So if you wanna look at the shot before it even had a conversion LUT on it, that's what it looks like. That's straight out of the camera. The conversion LUT is just gonna bring it closer to like a Rec 709. And then from there, this is like where I start the color grading, put my grade onto it. So what I'm gonna do for my last touch is I'm gonna add some film emulation. Click on that at the bottom, and then I'm just gonna drop that grain all the way up to like 35 just to add that additional grittiness to the shot. And this grade is pretty much done. So I'm gonna take you layer by layer and show you the before and after, and so you can really look at the things we did to it. So tones, this is shadows, midtones, highlights. We went back in and added a contrast curve just to give it more of a pop, more of like I guess like a contrast pop to it. Then we added this gradient layer, and this is helping us give more focal to him in the shot. The shot was kind of flat lighting wise without it, and this just gives us more like a viewpoint to what to look at in the shot. From here, we adjusted the red. We met the red pop in this hat. Then we did the color grade, which brought those green tones in the shot, and then we went in on another layer and we refined the skin a little bit to add more of those warm tones back in there. So that's the color grade. This is how I color graded the shot in the bathroom. Not done to a T, but this is just like how I would do it if I redid it. I would go through and I would do this again for probably like 2 hours if it was for the actual project. Now, another thing that I really like to do when I'm color grading as well is I like to preview what the shot looks like on black and white. The reason for black is I want to make sure my shadows aren't favoring too much color. All right, so what I do is I just adjust my scale to like 80, and then I can see what this looks like on white. I think this looks great on white. This looks dope. And then in Final Cut in the preferences, I can change my player background to black, and then I can see what it looks like on black, which it actually still looks really good on black as well. So this is a fire color grade, yo. This is dope. All right, so let's get into this next shot. The homies in the ski mask. So I'm gonna drop a Color Finale Pro layer on this, and then we'll go and adjust this. Let's do edit layers, hop straight into that. And the first thing I want to do is drop on the color wheels. I'm gonna rename this tones. And before I even get into this, like just looking at this vector scope, I can tell a lot about this image. I can tell that the blue is really saturated, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's kind of overpowering the image. The red is supposed to be like the focal. You want the red to pop. Like when I got the outfits, when I did the color design, when I did the color choice, the design for the set, all that, I knew that I wanted the red to pop. So I can already see looking at the vector scope, like this cyan, this blue tone is like really, really popping. And it could also lean more towards this way to get like a better color contrast. But we'll adjust all of that. So let's just adjust our tones first. Again, I'm not really paying attention to the waveform. I'm just going off eye. Just going off eye. That looks good to me. I'm gonna drop my midtones down just a tad bit, not too much. Punch my highlights just a little bit. And then from there, I'll bring my midtones down. And I'm gonna just go ahead and add in a lot of my saturation right here. Good tone wise, let's drop in the contrast curve. For the contrast curve, I'm gonna drop this joint down just a little bit. And then I'm gonna pop the midtones. So if I drag it this way, you can see the midtones, like the red and also like in the skin is just popping. So I drag that a little bit towards the left, not too much. The shot looks mad like poppy in the highlights. So I'm gonna go to tones and bring those down just a little bit. That looks good. All right, next thing I wanna do is I wanna adjust these red tones. So I'm gonna drop into 6 vectors and I'm gonna do, let's do color adjustments. Because I also wanna adjust this blue tone as well. I think the blue is popping too hard. It's like, we can clearly see this blue is reaching the square on the vector scope, which we don't want, because we don't want the color to clip when it exports. So I'm gonna go into the cyan and adjust this first. I'm gonna bring the luminosity down because I want it to be darker. I don't want it to like overpower the entire image. So I'm gonna just bring the luminosity down, also the saturation. And I'm gonna go into our red and I wanna adjust the hue of the red because we can see right now it's leaning more towards the magenta side. We just wanna bring it closer to like a red, the actual red. And then there, I wanna punch the saturation. I want this joint to be like popping off the screen, popping, all right? So that looks good. I'm gonna drop the luminosity down just a tad bit on the red just to make it deeper. And I think that looks good. I think that actually looks really good. So the next thing I wanna do is I wanna adjust the skin a little bit because when we do these red adjustments, the skin tends to sit here a little bit as well. So you can see it's very saturated in the skin tone area right there, which isn't a bad thing, but I think it's like a little bit too red. So I'm gonna drop on an Hsl curve and I'm gonna go to hue versus hue. From here, I'm gonna select the skin tone right here. You can see that this is like favoring a little bit of red too much. So I'm gonna click it. I'm just gonna mess around with it, go up and down with it, see what looks best. And I can actually look at my vector scope over here to get us closer to like a real like the real tone it should be. So I'm gonna go here. Our skin is like right here, so we can see that like this is leaning more towards like the red side. So I'm gonna just go up a little bit. I don't want it super warm, but I also don't want it super red either. I think like that looks good. And I'm also gonna go into the hue versus saturation. And I wanna bring the saturation down just a little bit in our skin. Keep it in the red, but bring it down on our skin. That looks good to me. All right, so before, after. Skin tone looks like good right there. All right, so from here, I wanna do a little bit of grading. So I'm gonna drop in one, I'm gonna do, let's do color grade. And the colors are already here. It's not much adjustments we need to do with the color. We can see we got like a perfect color contrast. Like this line is pretty much straight. So this shows like these two colors are like on the opposite sides of the color wheel. The contrast is great. But one thing I do want to do is I want to add in some teal into the shadows. And this is gonna do a lot for this image. Just add some teal into the shadows just a little bit. Do before, after. I like that adjustment, but one thing that it's doing is it's kind of like dropping out a little bit of that saturation in the skin tones, which I don't want. I'm gonna bring my waveform back up too because I want to look at this. So once we do that, I want to add in another layer just to adjust our skin. So let's do a color wheels. Let's do name that skin. And then from here, I'm gonna add in a mask, click on the mask. Let's do an Hsl mask. And let's just start selecting some colors in our skin tone. Do the display down here at the bottom to composite mask so we can see what we're selecting. And I'm just gonna go through and just like add in more of those skin tone, more of that skin tone range without selecting too much. Like that wasn't bad actually. Select that color right there. Let's deselect some of this red. Let's deselect some of this red. Yeah, all right. This actually looks pretty good. I'm just gonna adjust it down here throughout my saturation and luminance values. Small my saturation a little bit, and then I'm gonna open up the luminance a little bit. And this looks good. From here, just adjust my blur, get that to like a 3. And then now it's just trying to adjust this. So what I want to do from here is I just want to add in a little bit more of that warmth into the midtones because it's kind of getting lost when we brought those shadows in. And then I'm gonna adjust the opacity of the skin layer to like 50%. And this is pretty much done. I would go back through and maybe adjust my midtones just a little bit, bring those down. I think this overall shot can be a little bit darker. Like that. I like the way that this looks, and this is pretty much done. So this is before, this is after. I'm gonna go in and add a little bit of film grain at the end. So boost that up to like 35. Get the grittiness back into the shot, and let's preview this on black and white so we can know if our our shadows are too saturated. We want the shadows to still feel black, not too blue. So up against black, this actually looks really good. And then looking at this up against white, this actually looks really good as well. Up against white, it's a little bit dark. So I'm gonna go in and I'm just gonna pop my highlights a little bit on that bottom tones. And from here, bringing that up, I can see my reds are clipping a little bit up here. So I'm gonna go into my color adjustments and drop the saturation on that red tone just down a little bit so it's not clipping. And that looks good, yeah. So that's the before and after. Again, like I said, if I was doing this for my actual project, I would take a ton of time and go outside for a walk and then come back and look at it because this could look totally garbage. You don't know you won't know until you look at it for a second time. So that's my color grading breakdown. That's how I do my color grading process inside of Final Cut Pro 10. Using Color Finale. Again, if this helps you at all, drop this video a like, drop a comment down below. Let me know if I should do more of these. If you're new to the channel, you like content like this, consider hitting that subscribe button. But with that being said, I'm out, y'all. Peace.